This is a special report about the issue between U.S. and China, which extends to North Korea because North Korea is a proxy of China.
It's D-Day. The US is set to slap tariffs on Chinese goods on Friday, the first shot in a trade war between the world's two biggest economies. Starting Friday, the US will tax around 800 Chinese products that are worth 34 billion US dollars a year. Beijing has said retaliatory tariffs on around 545 US goods ranging from soybeans to pork, also worth around $34 billion, will go into effect immediately after the US acts. It could mark a new phase of a trade conflict that has roiled global markets in recent days.
Okay, so the terminology she uses is interesting. She says it's D-Day, and it's a big deal. They're saying it is the largest trade war in recent history. I'll come back to that story. Uh, but the largest trade war in history. Check this out.
China's Commerce Ministry accused the U.S. of launching the largest trade war in economic history Friday. The statement came after the Trump administration imposed a 25% tariff on $34 billion.
So the largest trade war in economic history, and with what they're doing now, they're taxing items that are imported, and with everything that is quote unquote made in China, it seems like it would really hit us hard. With all the goods that we buy that are made in China, the extent of the effectiveness of them taxing items that are exported from China into the USA, it could really hit our pocketbooks hard by itself. And that doesn't even go into the whole inflationary, Federal Reserve issue and all that. Uh, but I just want to go through some things here because the Korean issue is not stable. It was a big show with a meeting between Trump and Kim, but the Korean issue is not intended for peace. I've covered this story before. Tae Young Ho, this is the highest ranking North Korean defector, and this is him testifying before Congress. And you're going to hear him say that the alliance between China and North Korea is compulsory. That is, if North Korea goes to war, China will automatically help them. And that was the case in the Korean War. And whenever the U.S. and South Korea invaded North Korea, they pushed North Korea back, and China invaded or came in across the Yalu River to help North Korea and push the U.S. and South Korea back. So China has already helped North Korea, and this is what he says about the alliance that still exists between China and North Korea.
But if we read North Korean military alliance with China, there is a compulsory clause. If war happens on Korean Peninsula, then Chinese side will automatically, naturally involve in this war. And
so if North Korea goes to war, China will automatically go to war with them. Uh, so that's what the issue is. It's not a coincidence that all this stuff is happening at the same time. Trump, for the past 20 whatever years, North Korea should have been disarmed, da 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 da. But I'm gonna do it this time. It's me. Is this my time to do it? At the same time that the U.S. economy is about to collapse, and that this trade war kicks off, that China is, building up their forces in the South China Sea, that all this tension is going on over Taiwan. Check this out. China may no longer help U.S. in sanctioning North Korea. Trump.
US President Donald Trump says China may no longer help the US when it comes to coordinating sanctions against North Korea as the trade spat deepens between the world's two largest economies at a Republican rally in South.
So he says China may no longer help the US, this is Trump, in sanctioning North Korea. That's a pretty big deal because if China ceases to sanction North Korea, well, then the economic tension raises off of North Korea. And I think that is definitely, I don't think he just said that. I think that's something definitely going on. And because of that, you can see that North Korea, the tension or the pressure is being raised off of them. And it was no coincidence that right after the Donald Trump meeting with North Korea, Kim Jong Un visited China again. And I thought I had that pulled up, but he did visit China again, and people were saying, he was going to ask for relief from the sanctions. And now, at this current time, uh, there's a North Korean official going to Russia and Cuba. Historically, two enemies of the U.S.
A senior North Korean foreign affairs official is now in Moscow en route to Cuba. Lee Soo-yong, the vice chairman of the Central Committee of Pyongyang's ruling Workers' Party, who is in charge of Pyongyang's foreign affairs in general, is set to be heading to Cuba for a 5-day stay starting Thursday. And he will be making stops in Moscow before and after his Cuba visit. The purpose of his visit to Cuba and Moscow is not known. Some watchers believe Lee's visit is to strengthen North Korea's party-to-party exchanges with Cuba after the change in leadership there in April. But there's also speculation that the visits may have something to do with Pyongyang's denuclearization talks with the U.S.
So going to Russia and Cuba because of the denuclearization talks. Now, check this out. They are saying now in the news, in mainstream news outlets, that North Korea is still enriching uranium, that they have no intention of denuclearization. This is mainstream news outlets.
We've seen North Korea back out of commitments to denuclearize before. NBC News quoted one official as saying there is absolutely unequivocal evidence that they are trying to deceive the U.S.
And this just came out June 29th. They're saying that North Korea this is from July 2nd, U.S. intelligence officials believe North Korea has no intention of denuclearization.
And as Pompeo hopes to sort out the details of North Korea's nuclear disarmament during his visit there this week, several reports are doubtful of Pyongyang's intentions to denuclearize. Our Park Hee-jun has more.
U.S. intelligence officials say that although North Korea may be publicly agreeing to denuclearize, it has no intention to do so, at least not for now. According to CNN, an official familiar with the findings of the Defense Intelligence Agency, part of the U.S. Department of Defense, said North Korean leader Kim Jong-un does not appear to be interested in full nuclear disarmament. Another official also told CNN that the Trump administration plans to suggest to the North a denuclearization roadmap which includes a detailed list of tasks. The officials did not specify the source of the intelligence, but the agency is known to utilize satellite imagery, electronic intercepts, and human intelligence gained from operatives. The New York Times also reported of operations at a new nuclear reactor that can boost the country's ability to produce plutonium, used for making nuclear weapons. The report, citing the Washington-based Institute for Science and International Security, also says the North's Kangsong plant, which has been running for years, is likely to have produced significant amounts of weapons-grade uranium. The CIA officials are eyeing whether the North includes the plant when it declares all of its weapons, missiles, and production facilities.
Okay, so they said this plant has been believed to produce a lot of weapons-grade uranium. And now they're talking about Pompeo, his visit over there. They're trying to see if North Korea discloses these things in this visit. Because although the U.S. is saying they're not giving a timeline, John Bolton said, they'd like to do it within 12 months. But they keep saying they're not giving a timeline for denuclearization. But Pompeo is supposed to come back with some type of progression here. What they're looking for, according to the news releases, is a disclosure of how much stuff they have that pertains to nuclearization. And so that's why they're saying they can't give a timeline. There's we don't even know how much they have, or the extent of their nuclear program. And so the first step is to find out how much they have. And so now they're saying, well, these other facilities are still enriching uranium, and we're going to see if that is disclosed in Pompeo's meeting when he asked them the extent of their nuclear program. And the meeting is supposed to go up until the 7th with Pompeo. And so it'll be interesting to see what type of results he comes back with, because what if he comes back and says they didn't include these facilities, you know, and that's speculation. We don't know what they're going to say. But the fact is that they're saying North Korea is still enriching uranium. That's in the mainstream media. And so now he's going over there to see if they are going to disclose that.
During U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's third visit to North Korea this week. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News.
Man, I tell you what, I watched this video, the 666 symbolism. I think this is the one. Man, it is undeniable the number of people that use this sign over their eye. I didn't intend on covering it, but since it came up. But man, if you just watch this video, they all do it. It's crazy. It cannot be coincidental, the amount of people that are doing this. Everybody's doing it. And that's 666 with an eye looking through it. That's referring to the antichrist. But where was I going? Okay, so as we have it now, the U.S. trade war with China is kicking off after the whole Korean issue, and now the Korean issue is set. The stage is set for it to dissolve. To say we gave them a chance. They're not denuclearizing, and they're not disclosing the extent of their nuclear program. And so that would allow for a war with North Korea, and then bring China in on the heels of this economic war. So the timing of it all goes together. I just pulled this up. This, if you actually want to know the CCTV English, you can see right here. It's funded in whole. Man, I tell you, man. It's funded in whole or in part by the Chinese government. So this is kind of like the Chinese news channel on YouTube, and they're just saying the same thing.
The Commerce Ministry statement reads, the United States has begun to impose 25% tariffs on $34 billion worth of
But they're going to say that it's a violation of the World Trade Organization.
Chinese exports. The U.S. has violated the WTO regulations and launched the largest ever scale of trade war. It is a trade bully which greatly hurts the global industry chain and value chain.
Oh, wow, I can't just pause this video. This computer is tripping. Okay, so I pulled this up. It's been an ongoing issue over Taiwan. Taiwan is a breakaway of mainland China when Mao Zedong took over mainland China, and the official government back then fled basically to Taiwan and established a government there. But they're saying we're still the official government, and that's basically mainland China is like a rebel group that tried to overtake China, and mainland China is like, Taiwan belongs to us. So there are two governments there, both of them, claiming those are imposters, we're the real China. And so that when you hear the one China policy, they're saying, hey, Taiwan is ours.
However, China has stated that they will not move not 1 inch concerning the South China Sea or Taiwan.
The Chinese president told Defense Secretary James Mattis that our attitude is firm and clear in terms of Chinese and territorial integrity, that we would not lose a single inch of the lands we inherited from our ancestors, while we would not take a single penny of others' possessions. The Defense Secretary's visit comes at a time of sharp U.S. criticism of China's militarization of islands in the South China Sea, and tensions over Taiwan, and a trade dispute between the world's two largest economies.
Okay, so along with a trade dispute, this tension South China Sea, and you've been seeing the news stories where the U.S. has been sending warships over there, saying it's free travel, and China's been saying, hey, this is our territory. And they've been building up these islands out there, getting ready, and they actually said they're getting ready for a war over the South China Sea. And here just recently, and it's been ongoing where China is basically telling the U.S. don't acknowledge the Taiwanese government, because any acknowledgement of them as an official government is a spit in the face of China, who says they are ours. Taiwan is ours. It's a breakaway area, but we're bringing them back in. Don't acknowledge them as an official government. It's been an ongoing thing. Well, here was it last month, in June, the U.S. just opened up an embassy in Taiwan, a new embassy. The United States unveiled a $250 million new base for the American Institute in Taiwan. So opening up it indicates the U.S. commitment to supporting the island as it faces increasing tensions with mainland China. And that's the Taiwanese president. And so basically what you have here is the U.S. backing Taiwan, and they passed, a couple months ago, that a law in Congress that the U.S. diplomats would begin having normal relations with the Taiwanese diplomats, which is an acknowledgement of them as a government. And this is infuriating China, and China is threatening to go to war over it, and has done drills, to practice attacking Taiwan, etc. So, and Taiwan's done drills practicing defending, and now the U.S. has Marines over there, has given Taiwan military assets and such. And so it's just all, you can see the big picture heating up, where, everything over there is coming to a head. And now the trade war kicks off, and they say always, the trade war leads into hot war. And I think Korea will be the flashpoint of that. I wanted to talk about this. Of course, The Economist, owned in part by the Rothschilds. In 1988, they put out this magazine cover, Get Ready for a World Currency. It has the dollar, the US dollar, burning. And it says 2018 on this new currency, 10 Phoenix 2018. Now, this was put out 30 years ago. They have a plan. And that's why I can cover that Pet Goat 2 video so much with conviction, because I know they have a plan. 30 years ago, they put out this 2018 showing the US dollar getting burnt. And I said it was the Chinese yuan, but when you look at it closer and compare it to the currencies, it's actually the Japanese yen. So here's the Chinese yuan and the Japanese yen. Okay. So you see here how it's got the white circle in the middle and the faces on the side. Well, that's what you see. So the white circle, the faces, the white circle, the faces. So this is Japanese currency in the US dollar going down. And the fire burning that, out of the fire comes the phoenix. So they're evidently, if you just interpret this, they're talking about the US dollar crashing, the the Japanese yen crashing, and from those two currencies, in its most literal sense, comes the 10 Phoenix. So whatever causes these two currencies to crash out of that world currency. But the point I'm making, US dollar gets burned up, 2018 new currency. We're already over halfway through 2016, and now they're saying the largest ever trade war is kicking off. These are not small things. The largest ever, that's the official statement from the Chinese government, largest ever trade war in history, economic war in history is kicked off. You think that will lead to the largest ever hot war in history? It's not a far leap, to think that. And, with this, going back to this Pet Goat 2 video, and, Pet Goat was a story read on 9/11 when Bush was sitting in that classroom. They were reading a story called The Pet Goat. So Pet Goat 2 sequel to 9/11. This is talking about the next attack on the USA. A lot of things in this video have already come to pass. I've been covering it extensively, but we're trying to figure out the things before they happen, which is not easy to do. But we're looking at it. But as it shows the news ticker in this boy's eye, it's going to say uranium is going to be the first word that comes across. See how this computer's doing, man. I don't know why I just can't get a computer to work right. Okay, guys. Alright, so you're going to see uranium come across in the boy's eye. I thought it said quantum when I first seen it, but Julian T pointed out that it would more likely say uranium, and that is correct. Well, I just can't, it just won't pause. The first word is uranium. The second word is market's plunge. So with this first word being uranium, it's interesting that before the market's plunge, you have an issue with uranium. And I mean, how accurate would that be if this North Korea issue, if they're saying they're still enriching uranium for nuclear weapons, and then before that, or in sync with that, the market's plunge. Okay, see here's a N, a I. This is not a T because there's not enough space in between the letters for a bar, crossbar. So ANIUM, uranium. And then market's plunge. Market's plunge, except the S&P 500 is only down 0.65. So it's almost as if the U.S. markets are stationary or stagnant, because that's not really a plunge at all. It's down, but it's not a plunge. So this must be talking about markets elsewhere. Markets plunge, and then war coverage next is what comes after that. But then it shows them bombing a mosque. Okay, and this ties into the antichrist. I've explained that we've been getting a lot clearer understanding of what this video is speaking of. It definitely deals with the coming out of the antichrist, but this deals with the first death of the antichrist before he goes into his transcendent state, if you will. But the bombing of the mosque, and then the missiles come out, okay, towards these targets. So just don't want to pause. So uranium and markets plunge, and what issue do we have right now going on? We have the continuation of enrichment of uranium according to the U.S. mainstream news, and we have the largest ever economic war being launched. And so the stage is set. Now, the exact day that things are really going to kick off to where these bombs actually go off or whatever, I don't know. We're looking at it, but it's hard to interpret now. Some things have already come to pass. This is with a third lunar month. I don't want to really go through it, but a volcano with lava coming out on this apple deals with the Hawaiian issue, and then this is an upside down heart on his boot. British royal crown gets knocked together. This British royal crown with a heart knocked together signified the royal wedding, because there's collusion, ladies and gentlemen. The New World Order, the Illuminati, Bilderberg, Masons, all that stuff, it all ties together. There's collusion at the highest levels. Club of Rome. Collusion at the highest levels, and they have planned this stuff for years and years and years. I just showed you, at least 30 years ago, they showed, get ready for a new world currency, pointing to this year. And so they have a long-term plan. And in order to deceive people into believing that this Antichrist is a transcendent being, they are showing events to occur beforehand and then letting those orchestrated events play out. And they're doing it from multifaceted angles in such a way to convince people that, hey, they couldn't have known this unless they were interacting with a being who transcended time and space, basically telling us the future before it happened, because he's able to transcend that. And that's the Antichrist, who comes in the end. He dies, then he comes out as a transcendent being, and then he shows us how to transcend allegedly, and then he comes out in history as the historic Christ after he transcends in these last days. So it's all, kind of a repeating cycle due to their time travel, basically, philosophy. And that ties into quantum physics and stuff. I watched an excellent video, and I'm going to point, I'll leave it down below, but this video right here that I watched yesterday is amazing. Where is it at? And I'll just leave the link for it down below. Okay, here it is right here. Ethereal. The battle for heaven and earth. Biblical cosmology documentary, and it's 2 hours long almost, but I watched the whole thing, and I'm telling you, excellent. He goes into quantum physics. He talks about how basically quantum physics is just a rehashing, saying the same thing as what was presented in the Kabbalah, the old Gnostic texts and such, and so tying in the old corrupted version of Christianity into what is coming out now in science. And I don't necessarily think it's all deception, as if the science is not somehow has a basis behind it. But the theory that he puts forth, which I think is entirely rational, is that the transcendent beings are manipulating particles. And he quotes the guy in here, I think his name's John Bell, who works at the CERN facility, who says it's like somebody's playing a trick on us because these things should not be possible. But regardless if it is manipulation of the information or genuine fact, the angelic beings, the fallen angelic beings, according to Enoch chapter 8, taught a lot of advanced knowledge to mankind. And so it would not be surprising if they taught things in the past and they were recorded in the Kabbalah, etc., to show this is the nature of reality, and that this same doctrine that was taught to them in the past is taught again or replicated again in the end by the same beings, because they're having interaction with these spiritual beings. And I mean, that's what it's about, breaking through another dimension. And they are being led to believe, from my research, that these beings are transcendent versions of humanity. Like they show in that Interstellar movie, the Donnie Darko movie. And actually, if you look it up, if you look up like Roswell, and these fake alien encounters that are crap. But if you look it up and look into it, they say at the end of it that
here are the top 3 high sugar fruits you need to avoid if you're looking to lose weight
this commercial
fast.
And that's one thing I don't do is monetize.
Hi guys, I'm Robin, and
well, I don't remember exactly what video it was, but I watched a video on Roswell, and at the end of it they were saying that the Roswell incident, the disclosure behind it was that the beings they were interacting with were transcendent versions of themselves, basically mankind. And so that's the theme here. And so we're coming to the end of the world, or the end of this present time, before Christ comes back, before the world's destroyed by fire, and then it's sequentially rebuilt according to 1 Peter chapter 3. As this destruction is coming, which they are, and people have said it's like they're an alien race trying to destroy the world. Well, they are destroying the world. And it says that in the seventh trumpet in the book of Revelation, that it's come time to destroy them that destroy the earth, because they're destroying the earth. I mean, look at everything they're doing. The nuclear reactors and on fault lines and chemtrails, and not to mention what they're doing to mankind with all the corruption in our bodies. Look at our health, society, morality. They're destroying the earth. And all these wars are about to kick off, these planned wars, but it's going to lead into a state of, and that's what you can read in the Third World War of Albert Pike, into a state of desperation from mankind where they're not going to know what to do. And, the whole problem, reaction, solution, Hegelian dialect, here comes the Antichrist, here comes the solution. Yeah, the world is coming to an end. There's no way out of it, but you can transcend the destruction. And that's the whole thing presented in that Donnie Darko movie. I keep talking about this, a Luciferian movie, where the transcendent human comes to Donnie and says the world's going to end in this many days, and this is how you're going to get out of it. You're going to transcend and go back in time and change the past and change the future because you changed the past. And that's their thing. And that's why you see in the Pet Goat 2 video, that's, on a I'm sorry, guys. That's what this partially has to do with, because this is actually a bite mark here, and it's going to split right down the middle where that bite mark is, and that ties into Eve, the decision of Eve to eat of the fruit being reversed. And so that's where it splits right down the middle of that. But you see her drop the fruit here. She sees what's going on. She drops the fruit. And it's just multi-layered sense talking about her changing her mind and not eating of the fruit. And so they're saying they can change the past. And that's why it shows the devil, or the Antichrist, coming out under the devil's head at the end. He destroys the church. Here he comes out at the end under the devil's head. These lotus come up. We're still in the lotus month in the Chinese lunar calendar. The moon of this month, the 5th lunar month, is called the lotus moon. And the water lily, which looks like the lotus, is the flower for July. But you see, he came out of the devil's head cave before, and then this church is going to collapse. But here it's got the cave with a swirl with the circular glass above it. And although he came out of the devil's head cave initially in this video, in another scene it shows him coming out of the cave that has the swirl with the circle glass above it. This is the church cave, and this is the Antichrist coming out through there. So the same guy coming out of two different caves, and that just has to do with the transcendent version of the Antichrist coming out in the past as a historic Jesus. And I'm telling you, the deception is going to be strong. They're going to say that's why he was born of a virgin. He didn't have a real human body. He was just a transcendent being appearing as a human. They're going to kick off all this stuff. It's a whole lot that goes into it, and I'm starting to see more and more of how exactly they're going to formulate their doctrine. But yeah, so here he's coming out of the cave with a swirl in the circle, and that's not the cave he comes out of here at the end. So they're saying this transcendent being at the end comes out from under the devil's head cave. He's doing all this destruction and corruption. And this church back here that has the cave with the swirl and the glass, that's not where he comes out of yet. Okay. Because he came out of there, according to them, in the past. But he is the transcendent version of himself when he comes out there. In other words, he comes out here, transcends time and space, and then comes out in the past as the historic Jesus in an enlightened version. Okay, now he's going to be doing corruption, but he comes out transcendent as one doing right. And so they're saying, the same being, and this is the same one here, the Antichrist. This is the Antichrist. If you look into the Quran, it describes the Antichrist as having one eye damaged like a grape. This boy has his eye damaged like a grape. Uh, it's showing him dead. This is the Antichrist, his original dead state. From first time he was born, in reality, his normal human state, he dies as a young man, and in the bombing of the mosque incident. Okay, so it shows him here in the egg. This is important. They're showing you the Antichrist doctrine. Draco, the dragon, waiting to devour the child as soon as it's born. It goes into they're saying the constellations showed the fulfillment of this from Revelation 12, and I disagree with that. I don't believe that's what I mean. The constellations are tied into paganism. Constellations are tied into paganism. If you look up the constellations and what they're linked to, it is Zeus and the pantheon, like false gods. And so why are we giving credence to this? Yeah, there are real constellations that are groups of stars, but to say it is Zeus or it's Hercules, a hybrid of a god and humankind, and to give credence to these things, and the woman Virgo, which doesn't tie into Mary, was originally had to do with fertility and a goddess, etc. All of them. Look into the history of these. But it shows Draco. Okay, now the baby was in the egg. Remember in Revelation 12 it says the dragon is waiting to devour the child as soon as it's born. Well, now the egg is hatched. The egg is open. It doesn't show you what's in the egg, but the dragon is coming, looking inside of the egghead now that the egg is open, ready to devour. Okay. So he's seeing the baby that was inside the egg, because this is the same egg. This is the egghead, ready to devour him. But then what happens? Then the bombing of the mosque, the child is killed. So instead of the child being in the clutches of corruption, if you will, he is killed early and transcends and somehow goes into a trance. So that's the bombing of the mosque. So when the child is born, the bombing of the mosque, and this is him, the child that was killed in the bombing of the mosque. So a issue with the Alaska Mosque, Palestinian issue. Child is killed and he ascends into heaven with all this potential. Look at this quote-unquote Jesus robe on him. We'll see how he's going to fulfill his potential. It's too big for him. Well, he's going up into the heaven as a fulfillment, according to them, of Revelation chapter 12. The Antichrist there. So this is him going up to heaven to be preserved from the dragon. But then he comes out as a transcendent being. And so yeah, they're bringing all this Antichrist stuff here at the end. And that's what it deals with. The Antichrist. I mean, at the beginning of the video, it shows a goat come out with 666 on his forehead. So they're not saying the Antichrist is a detriment to salvation. The Antichrist is the means of salvation, to teach man how to transcend, and he will see the goat with 666 on his forehead. But they're saying this, it's necessary for us to transcend, and that's what they show here at the end. The baby seeing the destruction coming, which destroys the pyramids. The Antichrist looking at it. They're looking at it, the phoenix up here, but the scorpion tail striking the hand. Revelation 9, when the Antichrist comes out, in order to teach man how to transcend this present life, in order to make men hybrids, as they were in Genesis 6, and as we read about in Enoch 15, to where they're spiritual state continues on after their body is destroyed, not in a transcendent state beyond time and space, but beyond their natural body. But it's going to deceive many people. Much deception is coming, ladies and gentlemen. We read about it in 2 Thessalonians 2, where it talks about the great deception that'll come because people don't love the truth. Jesus talked about it. Many false Christs will come and doing all these signs and wonders. It's coming. And it's not going to be, just sleight of the hand signs and wonders. It's going to be tied into doctrine, because they want you to bite onto the doctrine. And the doctrine is going to be an assimilation of many aspects of Christianity, Islam, etc., to say this all ties together. This is the true version of Christianity according to them. And it is not something new. I'm telling you, the devil's been fighting the true Christianity since the beginning. And I've talked about that in my book, Restoring the Biblical Christ, chapter 16. The earliest papyri, the earliest manuscript of the John Gospel that we have is a corruption of the Gnostic. The Gnostics corrupted it way back then. The earliest one we have, it's from the region of Alexandria. Now, that's not the original reading when you read Papyrus 66. It is the oldest manuscript. But when you look at the manuscripts around the area that date a little bit later, you know, it would be impossible for that corrupted manuscript to duplicate and spread that far and every other place have the correct reading, whereas this one isolated event has the corrupt reading. But Alexandria, Egypt, the dry climate papyri were preserved there because of the dry climate. But yeah, if you look at the history, that area, Gnosticism, flourished under the Valentinian Gnostic sect. And in that region, during that time, you have a corrupted version of the John Gospel, Papyrus 66, the earliest complete version of John that we have. And so the historically, the Gnostic ideology has been infiltrating Christianity from way back, and it's orchestrated by the devil. This is all a spiritual. That's why there's such consistency in it, because there's a plan to deceive, and you better believe he's using the Christian doctrine to deceive people. And I'm going to read this in 1 John because he says that even back then, whenever 1 John was written, that men were deceiving people that came out from them, but they were not of them. Okay. You can see he says in 1 John chapter 2, verse 19. We'll start at verse 18. Little children, it is the last time. And as ye have heard that antichrist shall come, even now are there many antichrists, whereby we know that it is the last time. They went out from us, but they were not of us. So he's saying that they were antichrist. They were in league with this antichrist doctrine instead of Christ, or against Christ. And look what he says, they went out from us. So they were numbered among them. They were among them. He says, but they were not of us. They did not share in what we share in. For if they had been of us, that means they represent us, they would no doubt have continued with us. But they went out that they might be manifest that they were not all of us. So he says, they went out, they didn't continue with us, and if they were of us, then they would have the same doctrine of us. But so they were among our number, but they split off and went this other way. And they're not of us. If they were of us, they would continue with us. They would be in our same doctrine even till now. But there were differences of doctrine even back then. And he says in chapter 4, check this out. Beloved, believe, 1 John 4, believe not every spirit, but try the spirits whether they are of God, because many false prophets are gone out into the world. This was during the time of the penning of this epistle. So you see how early the corruption, even back then, that we have not gone into a time whenever all of a sudden the corruption is beginning. This has been a long-standing war between truth and corruption. Because many false prophets are gone out into the world. Hereby know ye the Spirit of God. Every spirit that confesseth that Jesus Christ is come in the flesh is of God. And every spirit that confesseth not that Jesus Christ is come in the flesh is not of God. And this is that spirit of Antichrist, whereof ye have heard that it should come, and even now already is it in the world. So, the criteria he gives, he says, the one who says Jesus is not come in the flesh spirit of antichrist. And like I said, they're going to say the transcendent version of Jesus did not have the flesh. But according to Hebrews chapter 2, and it's talking about the coming of Christ, not a transcendent version of Christ, it says that Hebrews 2 and 14, for as much then as the children are partakers of flesh and blood, he also himself likewise took part of the same, that through death he might destroy him that had the power of death, that is the devil, and deliver them who through fear of death were all their lifetime subject to bondage. Okay, so it's talking about him dying on the cross. And it says that he partook of death so that we could be saved from death. But the death that he took was contingent upon him having flesh. The notion, I mean, the early Valentinians, the early Gnostics taught that Jesus did not have a real flesh body. They taught that this flesh is corrupt, this whole creation is corrupt, that Yahweh is a lesser god, a demiurge, and that Jesus came to rescue us from the demiurge, basically, from this whole corrupt creation that is tied into Yahweh, and to elevate us past that. And so they're saying that Jesus did not have a real body, okay, because he was a transcendent being. But that is not the gospel. Jesus did have a flesh body, and the fact that he overcame the flesh, the sin, he was tempted in all points as we are, yet without sin, and he overcame it. And it says in Romans chapter 8, he condemned sin in the flesh. So sin is no longer, justified in the body. It says, Romans 8:3, for what the law could not do in that it was weak through the flesh, God sending his own son in the likeness of sinful flesh, and for sin condemned sin in the flesh. So he condemned sin in the flesh by having the flesh. That is, through him overcoming it, you see that it is able to be overcome. And so the sin can no longer be justifiable. And that is because we are able to receive the Spirit and to walk as Christ walked. 1 John 2 and 6. The one that say they are in him should walk as he walked. And that is because of the Spirit. So even though without the Spirit we were unable to do it, Christ has redeemed us from the curse of the law, and now we're able to receive the Spirit, and we have to deny the flesh and follow the Spirit. And according to Galatians 5, I think verse 14, walk in the Spirit and you will not fulfill the lust of the flesh. That is the gospel message, that we can overcome sin by the Spirit, not that we are in this corrupt body so we're just all going to keep sinning. And I wrote books to that effect. I mean, if you read the book Explaining the Cross, Why Jesus Have to Die, that I wrote, it explains the gospel message. The Salvation Bible Commentary shows that once saved, always saved is not true. No, we don't all just keep on sinning after we're saved. Now, it doesn't mean we don't make mistakes, but I'm talking about willful sin. Because what they're saying is it's just evil, and that's why in the end, they do all this evil and they don't repent of it, because they're just like, this is just the way it is. And if you say you're not sinning, you're a hypocrite. And that's what's going on these days. I mean, the mainstream preachers are teaching, I sin every day, and teaching like sin is normal. And they'll even quote Bible verses to make it seem like if you say I'm abstaining from sin, then you're some type of hypocrite. But I can do all things through Christ. It's not me no more, but Christ lives in me. And if it's Christ living in me, then I can walk as he walked. Denying myself, taking up my cross. It wasn't easy for Jesus. We have to follow in his footsteps. Let him that sins, there's still no more. 1 John 3, it says, whosoever sins is whosoever commits, no, that's John 8:32, but it says, he that commits sin is of the devil. Check this out. 1 John chapter 3. We'll start at verse 6. 1 John 3 and 6. Whosoever abideth in him sinneth not. Whosoever sinneth hath not seen him, neither known him. Little children, let no man deceive you. He that doeth righteousness is righteous, even as he is righteous. He that committeth sin is of the devil, for the devil sinneth from the beginning. For this purpose the Son of God was manifested, that he might destroy the works of the devil. whosoever is born of God does not commit sin, for his seed remaineth in him, and he cannot sin because he is born of God. As long as Christ is our life, as long as we're led by the Spirit, we'll not fulfill the lust of the flesh. And the Bible says in Romans 8, as many as are led by the Spirit, these are the sons of God. And Romans 8:13 says, if you live according to the flesh, you will die. But if by the Spirit you do mortify, that means put to death the deeds of the body, you will live. That's the gospel. It's not sin and you're fine because, this is an evil, corrupt creation and we're going to transcend it. And so it doesn't even really matter. That's not the gospel message. But that's what they're gearing up to say, that the Demeru's, that Yahweh has this corrupt creation, and in order to, get out of here, we're going to have to transcend time and space. And that's where the mark of the beast comes in. And so the deception is going to be huge. And I feel like now I've written several books, and the Lord, I believe, is leading me to write another book. Hopefully I have time. If not, somebody out there, you especially overseas, if America falls, and my books are available even after America falls, because I specifically chose publishers that would continue to publish in other countries after the destruction of the USA, because I believe it's coming. So read my books, I would ask, and I don't make money off of them. I price them as low as I could. So it's not about money. I don't monetize my videos, for example. And believe me, I'm behind on my bills, even though I work full time. But, I partake of that struggle because that's the way it is in society, And just because I make videos, it doesn't cost me to make videos. So why should I make money off making videos? We all have our calling. And, I'll go through with people instead of trying to milk off of people that are already struggling so that I can have it easy, which is what these preachers do a lot of time. But I would say read the books, and if I'm not able to complete the work of exposing this antichrist doctrine from all the angles that they're going to use in the Bible, then seek God, and the same God who is leading me to do it or giving me the information will give it to you. But I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try to compile some stuff, and maybe I'll make a video about the compilation of it and just hit it from all different angles, because the deception is gonna be so massive, man. It's hard enough to resist sin whenever you believe the true gospel message. I mean, it's a fight. But once this deception comes, the whole world, they're going to think we got the transcendence coming. We don't need to repent. We're going to transcend. And it's just going to basically present salvation. If it's for everybody, you just take the mark of the beast. You're going to transcend with this, and this is your pathway to salvation. And the Christians are going to be seen as hateful, stubborn, ignorant. But you who know the Lord, hang on to God. Hang on to God. And if anything you feel convicted about it in your conscience, stop doing it. Stop doing it. Ask God for help. And you can't do it by yourself. But you will be amazed if you go to God in all sincerity with a broken heart and just seek Him for help for an issue that you can't be free from. You will find the strength to resist. But it's still temptation. That's why it's called temptation. But if any man be in Christ, he's a new creation. There is liberty in Christ Jesus. And if the Son sets us free, we'll be free indeed. And that's in regard to sin. So it's all about Jesus. You can go to my webpage. You can go to my YouTube channel. You can click on my name below this video, and the feature video. It says a message to all Muslims, Christians, everybody, and it's me reading the audiobook version of Explain the Cross: Why Jesus Have to Die. So check it out. That way, if you don't understand the gospel, you can understand the gospel. Because so many people, I mean, it's basically everywhere. People say Jesus died on the cross for your sins, and so basically God's wrath was satiated whenever Jesus was punished. Well, how does that make sense? In any courtroom, in anywhere in the world, if you had a guilty person standing before the judge, and the judge said, I want to let you go free, but in order to do that, in order to have mercy on you, I've got to bring in my son and have him killed, and then the stipulation will be met for me to let you go free. Nobody would say that's justice. Nobody would say that's mercy. That would be an injustice because the innocent man was punished. How does that make sense? It doesn't hold water, but when you understand the gospel correctly, everything makes sense. And I'm telling you, like, this whole notion of Jesus was able to live without sin, but we're going to just keep on sinning. This whole notion is part of the antichrist deception. Anybody that comes to you telling you just got to keep on sinning, that's part of the antichrist deception. I'm telling you, man. The old Christians didn't believe that. And I went through a lot of the ante-Nicene fathers, people that wrote before the Council of Nicaea 325 AD. In my book, the Salvation Bible Commentary, you can get that book, and it's a reference book, and you can flip to the scriptures that are used to promote this notion that you keep on sinning after salvation, or this notion that you can sin and you're just going to stay saved. And again, I don't mean, there's a difference between making mistakes and willful sin. You get what I'm saying? The Bible says in Hebrews 10:26, if we sin willfully after we come to the knowledge of the truth, there remains no more sacrifice for sin, but a certain fearful. Let me see how exactly it's quoted. It's important that we understand the whole gospel and not just a part of it. Hebrews 10:26, for if we sin willfully after that we have received the knowledge of the truth, there remaineth no more sacrifice for sin, but a certain fearful looking for of judgment and fiery indignation, which shall devour the adversaries. He that despised Moses' law died without mercy under 2 or 3 witnesses. Of how much sorer punishment, suppose ye, shall he be thought worthy who hath trodden under foot the Son of God, and hath counted the blood of the covenant, wherewith he was, past tense, sanctified, made holy, an unholy thing, and hath done despite unto the Spirit of grace. So he says a person who was, Hebrews 10:29, sanctified by the blood, if they go back to willful sin after they come to the knowledge of the truth, no more sacrifice for sin. He says if we sin willfully after we come to knowledge of the truth, even if he was previously sanctified by the blood. And he's talking about Christians. It's the same place he says, don't forsake the assembling of ourselves together. He's talking about Christians. So my books, I'll leave the links for my books down below. Again, I don't make money off of it. It's hard to believe anybody in this day of corruption, but God has a remnant. And ladies and gentlemen, I know it seems like the Illuminati have control of everything, and it's hard to believe anything, and it's hard to trust anybody. But God has a remnant, and he is present help. You read the history of Israel in the Bible, how it seemed like the world would be against them, but God would always be there. And as long as we stay with God and don't compromise and don't kowtow and don't punk out because you're afraid, trust God and stand with God, even if it costs your life. It cost Jesus' life. Who are we to shrink back from death? Stay with God. Trust God. They don't have the end all be all say, Yeah, the Bible says the whole world is under the power of the wicked one. But there's a remnant, and God is real, and he's always been sufficient to sustain his people despite the whole world being. If God is for us, he's more than the world against us. Greater is he that's in me than he that's in the world. Don't be afraid. Speak. It's your time to stand up. It's not your time to hide in the corner. No man lights a candle and hides it under bed. You're a city on a hill. You're the light of the world. Go with God.